All right. Both of you were here when we kind of circumnavigated the idea of how a baby gets an aura and the idea of, what happens during birth. Do you remember that? Remember that meeting? I think it was two meetings ago, maybe three. Yeah. Hannah, do you remember talking about such
Um,
things?
I do remember bits of it, yes.
Yeah, okay, right. I'm sure you took notes. You're always taking good
I
notes,
did
aren't
take notes.
you? Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Right. Um, are either of you able to sort of reheat it a bit, or at least touch on some of the fine or the high points of it? Well, I'm asking because we're going to skip off of four now. Not that we're done with four, because it can literally be a lifelong process. Yeah. But we're going to talk a bit more about things like the soul and the spirit and the pentagram and the sevenfold system leading to the eightfold system and all of these sorts of things today. Okay, so a lady starts feeling funky. We're just gonna skip the esoteric part, right? And maybe a little bit nauseous, maybe a little bit happy, down, back and forth, sweats, and then cold, and all of this sort of stuff. And I'm not talking about menopause, but what does she do? She goes and urinates on a little test thing, and then she goes to her man and says, "What are the words? Huh? What are
I'm
the
pregnant.
words? I'm pregnant." Yeah, right. Have you ever bothered to anagram that?
No, I haven't.
Got to get your anagramming skills up there. But I'm pregnant. Anagrams to in pentagram.
Wow.
Right. What does that mean? Yeah. We talked about. We sort of lightly brushed on the quickening, which happens roughly 20 weeks in. You know,
Yeah.
a entire pregnancy is about 280 days, which is 10 moon cycles, 10 lunar months, having to do with the zero becoming one. Yeah, because 10 roots back to one. It's like one, two,
Right.
three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Born, you start again at one. You're going from the small universe of your mom's womb to the large one of the ecology of the planet. And so it starts over again at this kind of one thing. Let's start by talking about the spirit. The spirit can best be represented like this, with a dot in the middle. Why would the spirit be a triangle? What do you know about the triangle? Anyway.
First number that's able to contain, for one.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sure. What else? It always implies three forces, doesn't it?
Right. Right.
Got your positive, your negative, and your neutral. Uh, right. So I'm going to give away that the spirit is represented by the triangle, but we're going to work into what the positive, negative, and neutral aspects are with this. What do you think? What do you think the positive aspect would be? Where does it come from? This is very, very. This will be very enlightening for your personal development journey, actually, because you have to understand the equipment you're working with in order to do anything with it, right? I mean, if you're not an auto mechanic, you don't just decide to tear apart your car and rebuild the engine, or make some improvements on it without knowing what you're doing. You study how it was put together. You study the design, and then you're in a position to make an improvement, right? Add a chip to it, or bigger exhaust, right? Give it some more boost. All of these sorts of things. Well, this is works the same way as the human design. So threefold, spirit's threefold. How do you figure? I'll tell you it's threefold. Now you go figure it out. Huh? What do you think of that? Or as an American would say, how about that? Huh? How about that? What do you make of it? How about them apples?
Goodwill Hunting.
Huh? Goodwill Hunting. Yeah,
Goodwill
there you
Hunting,
go.
yes.
Got her number. How about them apples? Right?
Right?
Recall. Recall. All right. In order to explain the first part, I'm going to have to give away the second part. Or in order to explain the second part, I'd have to give away the first part. So I'm in a bit of a pickle here because I have to get you going, do some of the work for you. Is that okay though? I don't need to be a teacher all the time. I mean, I don't need to be a mystic all the time.
Right.
Anyway, you know the joke about the guru, right? About this guy really, really addicted to chocolates. You know, he's tried everything, tried absolutely everything. And finally, his friend recommends, there's this guru way up in the Himalayas, and he could pretty much fix any addiction, anything that someone is struggling with. He can fix it just with one word, a couple of words, whatever the case is. So the guy decides he's going to go ahead and visit this guru, which, by the way, the only message of a guru is in how it's spelled, right? G, you are you, guru.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he makes the trek. He makes the trek up the Himalayas, has to climb a rope ladder, finally gets to see this guru. And he's like, I can't help it. I'm addicted to chocolate. I can't stop it. I've tried everything, tried absolutely everything to stop eating chocolate. And the guru says, come back in a month. Go away, come back in a month. So he goes away, month goes by, still eating chocolate, comes back, climbs a rope ladder. Oh, master, what wisdom do you have for me? How do I stop my addiction to chocolate? Right. Have you heard this one, Hannah? You remember this, don't you?
Yeah, I have. Yes.
Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah.
Pretend you
I'll keep
haven't.
quiet.
Yeah, pretend you haven't, and
Yeah.
when the punchline comes, then you can still play along. Again, the guru says, go away for another month. And he's like, oh, he must know what he's talking about. So climbs back down the ladder, waits a month, comes back the next month. And, master, what do you have for me? How do I stop eating chocolate? The master turns and looks at him sternly and goes, stop eating chocolate. Just like that. Huh? Commanding. You guys taken back a little bit. He's like, that's it? Why couldn't you tell me that 3 months ago? That's it? That's all you have for me? And the guru says, well, before I can tell someone to stop eating chocolate, I first had to give up eating chocolate myself. See, it has to do with this kind of authenticity, where you're coming from it yourself. It's funny. It's one of those jokes with a deeper meaning. Best ones always do. Yeah. So the house of three belongs to the spirit. We can say sun, moon, and what?
Earth.
Kind of. You're kind of right. But bring it down a notch to something more personal, because you have a solar and lunar aspect to you. It's the silver and gold. Yeah? The sun being gold, nature. Yeah? And the moon being silver, which is what is the
AG.
chemical? Huh? Something G.
AG.
AG, yeah, right. Yeah, AG. You have those two things. You have a solar and lunar nature to you. You have a silver and gold nature to you. What's the neutralizing vector? Once you
Would
learn
be
it,
human.
what neutralizes the silver and gold in you? Positive and negative would just short out.
Right, right.
It's your body, or rather your complex. You see, because in order for forces to mix anywhere in the universe, in order for forces to mix, they have to enter a vessel, some sort of physical container. Because you can't just have positive charge floating around in space and negative charge floating around in space, because if they encounter each other, you just then have nothing floating around in space, right? They neutralize one another, nothing there. So in order for forces to mix, and this goes across the board, if you want to make green, you have to provide an ecology for yellow and blue to get together. This is what the plant herself does when she makes green leaves. You could call it photosynthesis, but there's always an electrical aspect behind what happens physically. So it's your body, it's your complex. We'll say complex because body is very limiting. Complex is the whole system of brains and everything. Okay. So this is your spirit. This is what makes up your spirit. And in an undeveloped state, then it's basically in spillage or containment. Spillage of silver causes you to go gold. Too much gold causes you to go back into spillage, and it's this law of two where you're over and under compensating. Yeah. Too much silver, too much gold, too much silver, too much gold. What can happen is a marriage of this, and you see this in all kinds of alchemical books, drawings, specifically alchemical drawings, where they have the sun and moon merging together into one thing. Oftentimes it shows up as the phoenix, but yeah, you get this kind of thing in alchemy. And really, this whole idea of the spirit is alchemical. Okay, well, with me? Now, the dot in the middle, I suppose that is. It's the purpose. It's what powers it. You've probably seen this, what's been called the package symbol
Yes.
in the past. I've seen that, haven't you? It's kind of one of the Eminent symbols called the package symbol. What it has to do with is the expression of the core of creation, touching the sun, moon, and body, solar, lunar, and corporeal aspects, and creating a joining. So without the lines, creation can't get to those areas to cause I suppose, a spirit flare would be the right word, spiritual enhancement, where those three forces now come together. Instead of going around the circle, or around the triangle, I should say, positive, negative, neutral, ad infinitum, then all three of them have an equal balance. So now, this will give you a bit to start off with about the spirit. Yeah, okay. How about the soul? Let's go over here for the soul. The symbol for the soul. White, red, blue, yellow, green. Okay. Can you see that? The white, red,
Yes.
blue, yellow, green. The spaces for those are specific. In the Emin, it's often been talked about of creating or generating or inducing a silver atmosphere or a gold atmosphere or a platinum atmosphere, which of course the platinum atmosphere would be when the package symbol comes into place. Very few people can generate that platinum atmosphere. Pretty easy to do silver and gold. Yeah. Do you remember these? Give you, and hopefully the camera won't respond, but my left foot is forward. Okay, left foot is forward. My right hand is extended, and to do a silver movement, or to be able to shower the room in silver, You do this where you shake it, you come across to the right and down. Yeah. And you keep doing this for about 5-10 minutes, and it will begin to induce or rain down this silver atmosphere. Lady, you would do it the other way. You'd put your right foot forward and do the silver motion with your left hand, you see. We'll get into why things are crossed below the head in a moment. A gold atmosphere, there's a couple ways to induce one. One of them is solid fixating movements. You take, gents, take your left hand, ladies, take your right hand and strokes, various directions. Doesn't really matter too much, but you want this, you know, as soon as it comes to a stop, it's locking in. That will begin to lock in and induce a gold atmosphere. There are other ways to do it. These are just two examples that I really hope you play with in the next coming weeks. See if you can create a silver atmosphere. See if you can create a gold atmosphere. See if you can do it around a doorway. Here's a really fascinating thing. The front door to your house, or maybe even one inside your house, fill it up with gold, you know, create a gold atmosphere around the door and kind of part way through and part way outside of it and inside of it. And if we had a center, we could really demonstrate this because it does work. But short of having a center, then you know, do it in your own home. Invite someone over. Peek out the window as they're coming, right? And just watch their general pace. You know, whatever their pace is. And then watch the transition that happens as they walk through the doorway. If you've done gold correctly and it's holding in there, you're going to notice them slow down and calm down, become more settled. And you might see a change in the plasticity of their face as well. So don't take my word for it. Just play with these things. Try it. See what you can do with this. Everyone's got it. I will say this. If you're having trouble connecting to the essence of silver, go get some silverware, like, you know, even a piece or something that's actually made of silver. Hold it in your receptive hands so that you kind of become a part of it. If you need to look at it to get the sense of what silver feels like, go ahead and do that, you know, and then try your silver. Same thing with gold. Get a bit of gold. Right? If you can't find gold, get a book like this, Encyclopedia of Ancient Egypt, yeah, and just start flipping through the pages and pretty much. Sorry, I can't find my camera here, but you'll find things that will get. There you go. There's a good one, right? Look at that, because that holds the essence of gold. Egypt was very gold, so you can also do that. Buddhism, very gold. Christianity, very silver. So you can get into these sorts of things. If you don't have the nature of silver and gold, then you got to go on a journey and get some. Like they say, it takes gold to get gold. They left out the part that it also takes silver to get silver and tin to get tin and all these sorts of things. All right. Now, what goes with white planetary wise? Right here we've got sun and moon. Which of the planets go with white?
Oh, geez.
I'll write it out, okay?
It's
Mercury. Now, let me take you on a little bit of a historical trip. When Gurdjieff was in the Greek monastery on Mount Athos, learning about the planets, because what he learned was alchemy, right? This is what had been preserved there in the specific monastery, two of them actually, in Athens, on Mount Athos, I should say, not in Athens. He realized that he was living in a different time. He was living in a different circumstance than, like, say, someone like Paracelsus or Robert Flood or, some of these other people that were in alchemy, even Sir Isaac Newton, just a different time. And people were no longer very interested in all of the hermetic, all of the symbolical, mystical type of stuff, because they were on the heels of the Industrial Revolution. It was all about science back then. And so Gurdjieff, being rather brilliant and also being tasked with the idea of bringing alchemy into the world, hello spider, bringing alchemy into the world, decided to couch it in language that would make sense for his generation. And so you've got chemicals instead of alchemical things like hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, those sorts of things, as opposed to air, earth, water, fire. You've got you've got the centers, because there was also a psychological aspect going on as well, right? And so the thinking of the time in the realms of psychology is that we're basically dispersed. And this is where this idea of you're not the same person from moment to moment to moment, and it was kind of simplified down into the 5 planets, because he couldn't teach about the 5 planets in a physical context because people didn't understand, right? They wanted science with it. So it became the aspect of the 5 centers became a psychological discipline. But at its core, thinking center, having to do with white, having to do with Mercury, having to do with Hermes, having to do with Jehuti, all the same person, okay? Just across different cultures, or Thoth. Oh, you can't see it. I'll bring them up. And look what he's doing. He's writing something, isn't he? He was the thinking center that instructed humanity in the various sciences, science and art and writing and language and all of these sorts of things. So now you begin to see the trace and thread and connection between why it was called the thinking center. Because it's to do with the planet Mercury, which is to do with Hermes, which is to do with Jehuti, which is to do with Thoth, going back through the ages. Mercury, yeah. All having to do with a high thought process. All right, you with me so far?
Yes.
Well, you can call it the thinking center, or you can call it Mercury. Doesn't matter to me. I'll know what you're talking about, and now you know what you're talking about, right? Because all of these terms, being stripped from their source, became extremely ambiguous, I think. Probably the first time you got into the Emin is probably the first time that you heard things like the thinking center, the moving center, the instinctive, the sexual, the emotional, all of these sorts of things, but you didn't know that it went back to or that it goes back to the source, which is its root, which is alchemy. Okay, so now, if you want to know a bit more about the thinking center, go study Mercury, not only the planet, but also the god, or Hermes, or whatever you wish to do. It will put you in tune with the process of the thinking center. All right, so there you go. Red. What do you suppose?
Mars.
Yeah, absolutely, it'd be Mars. Yeah. And the nature of Mars, Mars has this just amazing scar right across its face. Not talking about just the god, they did that to him as well, but the planet. Get a blown up picture of the planet, just this incredible scar across the face of it. The warrior. You understand, right? This kind of idea of having been tested in battle. But what does it take to be tested in anything, whether it be battle or any kind of goal that you wish to accomplish? It takes dedication. It takes discipline. It takes structure. It takes order. It takes being willing to be under command or in command of something. Okay, so all of these things that go with I go with Mars and go with the color red and go with this militant aspect of it is all to do with how your moving center should operate. Not how it does, but how it should operate. If there was a military unit that was run the way that most people run their moving centers, it would be a disaster. Right? Half of them would be off gorging themselves on things. The other half would be off drunk all the time. The other half would be just saying, you know, like I can imagine two soldiers. Hello, how are you? I'm good. How are you? I'm good. How are you? Right? Oh, I'm good. How are you? Really good. How are you? Right? Because the moving center goes into this repetition aspect of things. Whenever you go to the grocery store, what do they say? Always, invariably, hello, how are you? Fine, thanks. How are you? I'm good. Did you find everything okay? Yeah, I probably got a little too much though. Right? Like she hasn't heard that 85,000 times before. We always think we're original, don't we? Yeah. The other one, tell you. You go up with some sort of merchandise, loaf of bread or whatever the case might be, and it doesn't have a price tag on it, and it can't. They don't ring it up. You know, can't be rung up. You know, what do people invariably say that they think is so clever? Everyone says it.
I guess it's free.
Oh, then it must be free, right? Everybody says it. Yeah, there's nothing original about it. It's just part of the
Yeah.
astral light of the moving center going into repetition, you see. Yeah. Try this sometime. If you really want to understand the moving center, go in with the intention of bumping them out of the moving center. And one way you can do that is just to be bloody honest. You know, how are you? Well, I'll tell you. I woke up this morning and I was just like foggy in the head. Really kind of couldn't think very clearly. It took 4 cups of coffee just to get me to the point where I actually felt awake. And my back is a little bit out. It kind of hurts today. I don't know why. I don't know what I did to it. Maybe it was because I was in the yard working on the sprinkler systems yesterday. Have you ever worked on sprinkler systems? They're difficult. You wouldn't think they're so difficult, but you know what happens? Every year that the snow comes, it packs down the lines. Yeah. And so you end up with sprinklers that are pretty much are underground. And speaking of underground, I got so muddy yesterday, you know, all over me. This is my actual story about yesterday, okay, by the way. But I got so muddy all over myself, and it makes me wonder why people take that and put it on their face as though it's going to, you know, enhance their look and give them beauty. Have you ever wondered that? Right? Stumped. At that point in time, you've thrown so many different things that they cannot track because the moving center doesn't do that. The moving center likes rote, it likes order. You know,
Yeah.
I say, how are you? You say, fine, how are you? I say, I'm good. I say, did you find everything okay? You chuckle and say, yeah, probably found too much, you know. This didn't ring up. Oh, is it free? Right? I mean, the moving center loves that kind of thing. When you begin to throw someone out of that realm, well, first they become just kind of blank because they're not used to having to deal with things on a mental or an emotional level. And so inside their systems are struggling, going, you know, God, like how do I deal with this? Huh? And for a brief moment in time, before they latch onto some role that they decide that they're going to play in this situation, whether it be that they think you're nutty, right? Like, oh, I got to deal carefully with this guy. Don't make eye contact and whatnot. Yeah. No matter what, they're going to try and assume a role to help them deal with that. But during that space, when they were in their moving center, couldn't find something to latch onto, and then they did find something to latch onto. In that space, you see their essence. You see their essence, which is usually about as intelligent as a 2-year-old. I had this clown. I was about 5. This temporary relative. You know how it works, right? People get divorced and new relatives come into the scene and then they go away. But what an asshole. literally what an asshole this guy was. He was a science teacher. And he's talking to this 5-year-old me. He says, so, Chris, say something intelligent. The smartest thing I could have said was, boy, you're fucking condescending. Right? But I didn't have anything. Yeah, I didn't have
Right.
anything. Because
Right.
at 5, you're still mostly essence. You don't have these pre-programmed, I came up with something about, I think it was something about infinity. I was on about infinity, at that point in time. But again, it wasn't authentic, even though I was on about things like infinity and eternity and, these concepts, trying to get my brain around these concepts. It was the only thing I could latch onto. This man just made me feel small and inferior and insignificant. Yeah. I hope he comes back now. I'll sit him down. We'll have a lesson. He'll walk away not knowing what to say or do. That's what happens when essence talks to personality. It just goes, I have nothing. Personality. I've never seen this before. Gets out of the way. And by the way, this is why Emin ushers will interrupt. Did you know this? When you're having a conversation in the context of an Emin meeting, you'll notice this. Ushers will intentionally interrupt as you're speaking, will begin to talk over you, or will get the electrics of it and begin to describe the electrics of it before you can get out the words or the coat of it. And jump ahead of you, forecast into what you're saying. And the reason why is because it's constantly battering the moving center. Don't approach the work with a moving center attitude. And you'll notice it on your end because you will believe you have something super important to say. And when I interrupt you, or when Leo would interrupt people, or Philip or Pelly or whoever, right, ushers, start talking over them or getting ahead of the pace. If you observe yourself, you're going to have this bit of frustration at first. You're like, I just want to say what I want to, it's internal pouting that we do with things. But do understand there's an actual reason for it. It's meant to take things like the Emin out of the moving center because they don't belong there. Actually belong on that side, not even on this side at all. They belong over there. But so don't be offended when it happens. Okay? There's a purpose for it. There's a reason for it. Transmitting a way like this takes a certain high art, takes a certain high skill to be able to deal with people. I don't care if there's 1,000 of you or 4 or 2, doesn't matter. It's not arrogance on the side of the usher, hierophant, or whatever the case might be. It's not that. It's because where Emin sits in me is not in my moving center. One thing I'll have to say this. You may have heard the term coding in the past. Coding, right? In the context of Emin lessons, oh, have you got the reference, right? Oh, I've got that coding. And what it was is this idea that an usher would get up and go through something like the ray of creation, or how the baby gets an aura, or the daffodil lesson, or all of these kinds of things that were coded into the Emin. And it was blatantly misunderstood, the purpose of that. It wasn't meant to go into a repetition. I remember many, many years ago when I had the notion to become an usher. This was long before my journey to the East. I was asked to give some lesson or another, and I couldn't do it right. I didn't have it word for word. Yeah. And I was a bit chastised for not having it word for word, because the concept at that point in time was that Emin needs to be transmitted exactly the way you heard it to the next line and the next line and the next line. And I call bullshit on that. What I think is that you need to get a lesson. you bring it in and you process it for your own life and your own self. You work it out in your own self, and then you come to the next person with a genuineness of your experience with it. Because that's dead food. You see, if you just go, I mean, what are you, a parrot? Not saying any one of you, but you can, I mean, a parrot would probably be a better usher than half the ushers that were out there, right? As long as they got the verbiage and could transmit the coding. No, it's not the way it should work. You're a processing machine. You take it in, you process it, you refine it in many cases, and then you give it out from a more elevated standpoint. I'll give you this fact here, this white, red, blue, yellow, green. You heard about that in the Emin. You heard about the centers in the Emin, but you never added up that it was having to do with the planetary influences and forces. Right? That's because it wasn't in until I put it there. Right? This isn't, you can't go find this in a book and go, oh, of course, that sort of thing. That's my work product. Because I studied alchemy and found the origins of the teaching and the way and whatnot. This is my adding up. Now, I've elevated and refined it, and I have a better understanding of the centers than someone who is just given the lesson, got the coding, can give the lesson, give the coding. They're not transmitting anything of value. It's old, dead food. Work it, right? Elevate it. If I can give you any advice on this journey is don't become a parrot. Because you're already a human. God wanted more parrots. He would have made more parrots and less humans. Simple as that. Anyway, I'll stop harping. But you understand the nature of things. Emin should not live in the moving center. It shouldn't even live in the 5 centers, with the exception of pathways in having to do with, well, okay, these can be doorways into your Emin. You can approach the Emin from a blue standpoint, which has to do with principles and whatnot. You can approach it from a thinking standpoint and gain a lot of traction, emotional, sexual, having to do with the creative aspect of things, mixing, merging, and marrying things together, or even from a discipline aspect. I mean, God, take the Emin away from 1983, and that's discipline. You would think it would be a yellow thing because you're doing these devotions, all that, but Tuesday you have something to say, morning, noon, and night. Wednesday you have something else to say, morning, noon, and night. Paioi, paioi, paioi. Yeah, do you have the reference? You understand, right?
Yes.
These sorts of
Yes.
things. Yeah, that was how Eminent Way originally was not a yellow thing, although it appeared to be a yellow thing. You could get the sentiment of it, but it was a discipline. It was approaching the Emin through, you do this, just like this. Same thing with electrobics. I don't know if you've ever taken electrobics, but pretty close won't do. It won't do. All right. You are either doing the movements with absolute precision, right? My fingers don't go beyond themselves. They go right to the point that they are. I don't accidentally touch. I'm doing it directly in front of my, where the soul lives in the solar plexus. Everything is very specific, isn't it? That's a discipline. And what do they say? I invoke the discipline, right? Should be bloody obvious. It's a red way in. Anyway. All right. Green.
Venus, I believe.
Absolutely Venus. Yeah. Goddess of fertility, for crying out loud.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Symbol of fertility. If you ever get a chance to look at Botticelli, he was a painter, artist. La Primavera. Okay, the springtime. Botticelli's La Primavera. It's one of the most esoteric paintings of the time, and it's been missed forever. You will see there the entire story of the ray of creation in pictorial form. Got the blue man in the background, like the blowing on there. You've got the lady who represents the planet. She's pregnant. She's wearing a flowery dress. In other words, she's covered in flora.
Oh,
and
yes.
pregnant. Yeah. You've got the three muses kind of all doing their thing. You've got Cupid from the top, ready to do his thing down there. And then you've got, Hermes off in the other end of the ray of creation, as though none of that was there. You've got the peaches in the trees. You've got the fact that none of them are standing on the ground. They're all elevated from the ground. Yeah. Spend some time, I'm telling you, spend some time looking at that. And you'll be like, he knew the ray of creation. That's exactly what it was. Why did I go there? Just gonna share things, all right? It's part of the fun of this. Yeah. So Venus, exactly so. Blue.
It's not Saturn. Saturn, I believe, is yellow.
Jupiter. Jupiter.
Jupiter. Yes,
Jupiter.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
blue
yes,
is
yes.
Jupiter.
Yes.
Having to do with, this about Jupiter is an interesting planet because if it wasn't in our solar system, we wouldn't be here. The reason why is because we would have been beat to death by everything that enters our solar system. But what happens when you get these massive asteroids coming into our solar system? Jupiter's gravity is so strong that it diverts them off of the path of the Earth, most of them anyway, off the path of the Earth, and they either begin to orbit with Jupiter or they collide with it. But that's the protective aspect of blue, that sealing kind of aspect of blue. Seal your aura in blue. What you're asking for is Jupiterian force to come into the aura. Okay, right. Has also to do with things like standards, but standards from the point of protecting ecologies. Where police should be, for example, most police uniforms are blue. They should be there. Well, I mean, their motto here in America anyway, to serve and protect. Yeah. Hannah, sorry, Bobbies. Yeah. Right? Bobbies. Yeah. They should be here to serve and protect, and not be belligerent tyrants, which is what most of them have become, which is more of a Saturnian thing, to be honest. Saturn was more of a belligerent tyrant than Jupiter ever would be. I mean, eating his children and everything. You wouldn't want Saturn as your dad, I'll tell you that much. Very short lifespan. Right, and like you said, Saturn. Yellow, Saturn. In its soft side, having to do with emotional content, emotional aspects of things. And in its hard side, having to do with emotion, its emotional aspect of things. You see, because emotion is a two-edged sword, isn't it? None of these other are two-edged swords. I wouldn't call Mercury a two-edged sword, although it has a compare and contrast aspect to it. That's not a sword. That's sorting out. Emotions, very much two-edged sword. So you've got Saturn eating his offspring, and then you also have the protective aspect of Saturn, but not like in the Jupiter way, having to do with, well, for example, Islam shows up a lot in Saturn in that way. Not the militant side, okay? We'll go into all of the major religions at some point in time. They'll hold some very good value. Okay, right. So that's your 5 centers. So now you've got silver and gold, having to do with the spirit. You've got the mixing pot, topeth, the pot. You've got the mixing and marrying cauldron, the container, for the spirit, or for the solar and lunar forces, silver and gold forces. And then from this, you've got the 5 aspects, which is your soul. So you've got spirit over here, your soul over here. And there's a crossover. You might have seen a diagram like this before. where you've got the pentagram, let's see. Let's see it in my head for a second. Yeah, where you've got the pentagram separated out into two bits,
Yes.
Yeah. both having to do with this. What that is saying is really about this, that the body and the 5 aspects come together, but you don't really. Okay, here's a wonderful puzzle. All right. You know, in the Enneagram, where it just doesn't, I mean, the outer circle goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? But the inner one goes 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, and back to 1 in there. It's like, if you want to get to 2 on the inside of the Enneagram, you have to go through 4 first. 1, 4, 2. This explains a lot in the realms of esoteric traditions and the occult, and religion for that matter, because we've talked about A, B, and C influences. But for a C influence being the origin of it, it has to go to A and then to B. It has to go through the culture and then into something that can hold it. But you know that. Can't work any other way. It can't go C to B to A. It has to make this partial Enneagram aspect of it. Just like when you're eating something, you put a cracker in, it starts off at hydrogen 768, but it mixes with mixes with 192 to get then to 384. Okay, so the saliva, for example, in your mouth is a higher form than what the cracker ultimately becomes. Yeah, and then it goes and follows the Enneagram expression where higher acts upon lower to create a middle, higher acts upon the middle to create a higher, this type of thing. It's the Enneagram, same thing, all the way across. So this split symbol of the pentagram has to do with the convergence of this, the spiritual aspect, to that, with the inclusion of the body. Yeah, because when you marry these up, one leg matches the other. Okay, so full pentagram has the body as kind of part of it, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to process white, red, blue, yellow, and green. They would just zip out in the universe and find their opposites and annihilate one another when they came into contact. Right? And then from there, you get the 3 plus 5, which is 8. Or if you consider the fact that the body is a part of it, you get 7 because the body shares both symbols. That's where you get the 7-fold spectrum. The soul has to do with the 5 colors of the soul, 5 powers of the soul. Spirit adds silver and gold, and the promise or the prospect is a 7-fold array. What I mean by that is, just like the astral light of the planet, you carry a miniature version of the astral light in yourself. It's the septenary aspect of these 2 forces plus the body merging together. And that's where you get red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. It's a different system of color than the white, red, blue, yellow, green. Okay? So you're really under 2 different laws. If you are under a planetary ecology and need to mix and match with the planetary ecology, you need to have 7 levels of your own personal astral light so that you can mix and match with the 7 levels of the astral light of the planet herself. Otherwise, you would be foreign here and you'd be kicked out. You would not be able to survive. And let's say that there were, a planet with 5 levels of the astral light, and you show up there with 7, 2 of them would have to burn off, and you would no longer be human. You'd be something else. You wouldn't even be an animal. You'd probably be planetary or indigenous to that strange planet, but you would be neither an animal nor a human, right? Because an animal is very much different. An animal doesn't have this aspect. It has a body from the planet and it has a soul, a singular soul from the sun, but processed on behalf of the planet. In other words, sun shines to the planet, imbues leaves, they become green. Rabbits come along and eat the green, right? They just eat the green. They take in that yellow and blue force, the marriage of this the planet and the sun. And then a wolf comes along and eats the rabbit, but it's still just pulling that food from the planet and the sun out. So the soul of an animal is very different from ours. If you ever think your pet has personality, it's because it's under your influence. You're stronger than it is, and it becomes like you. Yeah, it becomes a reflection of what you are. And actually, the domestication of animals could potentially give them the ability to reincarnate as a human someday. Because they're soaking in the radiation of this sevenfold and fivefold spectrum of you that they would never get out in the wild, out in the forest. The Buddhists, and especially the Tibetan Buddhists and stuff like that, they believe that people who don't make the grade in life reincarnate as an animal. And what a horrifying prospect that would be. It's like if you have 5 fingers on your hand and someone offers you a 3-fingered glove, what do you do with the others? That's what it would be like being reincarnated as, you know, a bug or a whatever the case is. That'd be a 2-fingered glove, you see. You can't do anything with it. If you were to reincarnate as a chimpanzee out in the middle of nowhere, you literally lack the resources to really ever become human again, unless a loving human comes along, takes you under their care, and then you begin to get the radiation, the signal. You know, so you could save someone in that condition by nurturing it from a human standpoint. As long as you radiate true human qualities, they might get back on that correct evolutionary path for them as humans. But God forbid a worm, because I don't know many people, you know, that keep worms as pets. Yeah. But this brings up an interesting aspect of the ties into alchemy, and it also ties into the idea of being human. Is that everything you come into contact with, you should be looking to elevate. If I ever see an Emin person walk down the street and walk by a piece of trash, by a piece of garbage on the street, they'll have the biggest roasting ever, right? Because that's not endemic to human. Endemic to human is to take whatever surroundings you're in and elevate it, make it better. You know, this works with relationships, it works with whatever, anything you come into contact with. Strive your hardest to improve the situation. This comes down to the fauna life as well, flora life. And humans are strange, right? We go around making gardens and yards, parks in our own backyard, don't we? Yeah? No other animal does that. You don't see any other animal going out, you know, trying to the best they do is build a nest, which is great, right? The baby birds and squirrels and whatnot. But humans, they naturally know that it's commanded upon them to do that. I mean, that starts in Genesis, doesn't it? Go work the fields, right? God says, here's a small garden, make it across the whole world, fruitful, multiply, and all these other types of things. But really, the second law, wasn't it? The first law was be fruitful and multiply, because that's logistics. 2 tribes. I won't call them two people, because it wasn't 2 people. The Adam tribe and the Eve tribe couldn't do it without having progeny, without having offspring. Yeah. This is all over the place. Is it all right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah. Let's talk about Genesis for a minute, right? Adama, which is where we get the word Adam, just means man. Kind of has an indication of red man. It's very curious up against this aspect of red occurring in the head things, right? What was the creation story has two different versions of the story. In Genesis 1, Adam and Eve are kind of an afterthought. God goes through and God creates, the heavens and the earth and all of it, right? And then on the sixth day, there's Adam, and he's like, hey, while you're down there, would you do me a favor and name all the animals? Call that a chimpanzee, and that's a dog, and that's a squirrel, and that was one of his tasks was to name all the animals. Very curious from an esoteric standpoint. Talk about it, and then eventually he goes, you know what? Every baboon has a mate. Every giraffe has a mate. Every elephant, everything that I see has a mate. Why don't I have one? And then you get Heva, which we call Eve, Heva, coming from the rib, as the allegory goes, of Adam. God puts him to sleep, takes out a rib, fashions a beautiful lady, wakes him back up, and there's Heva, Eve. Got the A tribe and the E tribe. We'll talk about that. That'll be a whole nother lesson all by itself, okay? All the begats in the Bible were not, so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so. It has to do with the evolution of humanity. All of the tribes that had a different signal in there. It wasn't one person begat the second person begat the third person. It was this tribe generated this tribe, generated that tribe, and so on and so forth. But I have a question for you. Let's say Genesis, we'll be really conservative and call it, 5,000 years old. Could be older, could be less, doesn't matter. Given that there are two creation stories, because in Genesis 2, it all starts over. It's like, you read through Genesis 1, okay, I got it, right? 6 days of creation, 7 days, God rests, got it. Move on. They ate the fruit, they talked to the snake, they were informed about the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they were informed about the tree of life, they were prevented from the tree of life. I got it, right? Got all of it. And then all of a sudden in Genesis chapter 2, it starts off with humans, male and female, being created in the image of God, and they're one of the first creations as opposed to the creation on the sixth day. Now, if you give the idea that people have been reading that story and very devout and people who pay very much attention have been reading those two conflicting stories for thousands of years, is it really fair to say no one ever noticed? Right? Of course they did. Of course they did. So why isn't it talked about? It is in some of the rabbinic literature. When you approach a holy book like the Bible or Torah, I should say in this example, but when you approach something like that, it's the contradictions that tell the story. It's not the story A and story B. It's when they conflict. The author was, stop that, it's that camera again. The author was trying to give you a clue of this has a deeper meaning, this has a hidden meaning. You go sort out why Genesis 1 and 2 are two completely different stories. Yeah. And then you'll get the real essence of it. You could start off at the surface level and talk about the idea that the thought form of male and female, the thought form of man and woman, was in Genesis 2, right? Male and female, he created them in his image. Let us, right? The Elohim, let us create man in our image, that sort of thing. So many clues in there about what it's really saying. You just can't read it from the surface standpoint, okay? So I'm not going to tell you all the mysteries of Genesis 1 and 2, but certainly put yourself to it at some point in your journey and gather the content that you can make out of it. And there's symbology regarding the other elements of there, like the serpent, who didn't lie, by the way. Right? The serpent told the truth through and through. Right? God said, that tree over there is forbidden. Right? Don't eat of it, for surely the day you eat of it, you will die. Yeah. Then the snake comes along and says, did God really say the day you eat from that, you're going to die? And he's like, yeah, well, that's what God said, right? I mean, we're talking about God that was walking around on the earth in the breezy part of the day, late afternoon in that area, handing out instructions, don't eat from that tree. And the other one over there, by the way, is the tree of life. This is called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which you can't know unless you have these 5 centers intact, by the way. You can't know good and evil because you have nothing to bounce things off of. You don't have one center monitoring and looking at another center, but that's beside the point. For the day you eat of it, you surely will die. The day. So I'm not going to call it an apple because the Bible doesn't say it's an apple. It's just a fruit. Right? But crunch. Hey, Adam, try this. Sort of thing. Crunch. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they realize that they're naked. And they cover themselves. They're ashamed of their nakedness for that point in time. It's like any other animal. Right? Interesting, isn't it? See, you went from one model human to another model human that suddenly had more perception of self. Like that crow. What color am I? Anyway. And then God starts walking through Eden. Adam, Eve, where are you? And they're hiding, which is quite a feat to do from God. And you'd think God would be like, there you are. A master of hide and go seek, right? But they were ashamed and they were hiding themselves. And finally, God discovers them, hunting them down, and realizes that they had eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And what does he do? He says, oh, well, he can't say, oh, God, oh, me. Right? If you're God, you don't say, oh, God. But, oh, me. We better make sure that they don't get to the tree of life, because if they then eat from the tree of life, their eyes are bound to be open and they will become like one of us. That's what it says. So many mysteries in there. Really encourage you to do it, to go through and read it. But so you've got fruit, you've got a serpent, you've got a rib, you've got the naming of the animals, you've got the 2 creation stories, you've got phrases like they will surely become like one of us, you've got the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you've got the tree of life, you've got the concept of having to till and work the ground with their hands, very difficult. Whereas before it would have been easy, now everything they do they have to toil for. Another way of saying that is just like animals don't have to work, they just are. They just are of their nature. You don't see, I wish I could get my dog out there digging a hole like with a shovel in some appropriate place. She'll do it just because it, whatever, a grub or something is in there. But, I wish I could get her to go water the grass or mow, for crying out loud. She's in her natural element, just like all animals are. They just are. They just be. They exist in their environment, in their ecology. They're already in Eden. It just happens for them. Humans have to struggle and labor to do something. It's a Model 2 type of thing. Model 1, more like animals. Didn't care if we were naked. Model 2, something got activated in there. And all of a sudden we're like, oh my goodness. There's a huge mystery in there. There's a whole Eminent in Genesis 1 and 2. I would really recommend over the week, just try that. Try reading it but read it from the standpoint of the knowledge that everything said in there is esoteric or occult. Do you know the difference between esoteric and occult? The occult is the contents. Yeah, go ahead. Huh?
Yeah, I was going to say with the occult, it was hidden. It's hidden.
That's what the name means. It means like occluded from sight. You know, if you have an
Okay.
occlusion, you can't see it, right? Esoteric means inner circle. If you want to go to the idea, esoteric has to do with the astral forms of things. In other words, the emotion, right? It goes thought, then you have the astral content, the emotional content, and then you have the thinking aspect of it, right? So esoteric is the notion. I'll put it that way. Easier, okay? Esoteric is the notion behind something. Like, for example, if you're tired of sitting on a rock, you know, that's hard and no one's ever invented a chair, and you think to yourself, I wonder, what if I construct something, right? What if I construct something? Can't get it to focus on me. I have to bring it in. That I can sit on that doesn't hurt my butt. Yeah. Now that, well, what do you say? Is that occult or esoteric? I haven't given you enough information to get there yet. So let me put it this way. There's the thought of it. I need to devise a plan to sit on something that doesn't hurt my butt. Okay. A bum, if you prefer. You got Brits over there too, right? Me bum. Yeah. Okay. This isn't working today. Anyway, then you sit down and you actually, you know, come up with different designs and plans and drawings. And, you know, the first one might kind of suck. And, you know, you sit on it and you're like, oh, what about my back? I don't have any back support in here. So occult is the design phase. Esoteric is the motivation behind it. Okay. It's my bum hurts. I need to figure something else out. That's esoteric. Occult is when the designs start coming into play and things get manifested in kind of the thought realms, yeah, where they're pieced together. Then physical after that, physical plane. Voila, a chair. Yeah. Okay. And that's exoteric at that point in time. Everyone knows what a chair is. So approach Genesis from the standpoint of what is esoteric, what is occult, and what is physical. I mean, you got to know that there's never once been a talking snake. Right? Obviously, that's either occult or esoteric. I mean, you wouldn't think that even back in the Sumerian times, which is when part of Genesis was written, that they thought snakes crawled, right, with little legs and could talk. I mean, they didn't. The whole story goes that God, you know, took away the legs and made it slither on its belly from that point forward. Well, archaeology would beg to differ. Snakes have never had legs and they could never talk and this sort of thing. It's either esoteric or occult. So go through, figure it out. Don't ever read anything like that from a literal standpoint. Ever. You will not get far. You might start a new religion by reading everything that way. But all you're going to do is fuck up a bunch of people if you do that. And the fall. The fall from Eden. It all means something. Do you know how to read Genesis?
50 beats per minute. Beat
Huh?
start.
50? Did you
beats
say
per
50?
minute?
50 beats per
50
minute?
beats per minute.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Right. Because you want to read it from a green standpoint. It's Genesis. It's generated. And there's 50 chapters conveniently in Genesis. So if you forget, just go to the last chapter and be like, oh, yeah, 50. Yeah, and read it at 50 beats per minute. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth proved to be formless and waste. And God's active force was proceeding to and fro over the waters. You'll get into the frequency of it. Right? I'm not sure if I quoted it correctly, but you get the idea. All right. So yeah, we covered a bit of ground, didn't we?
Yes, yes, yes.
As usual, I'll pretend to shut up for a little while, and then I'll bounce back in here because I can't stand it. But I will. Okay, I'll stop pitching for a moment and see what's in you about it, or if you have questions, or you just want to elaborate on certain things. Now's your time. This is how I trick you, by the way. I always come back to the chair, sit down, and go, thank God it's finally stopped. Don't trust it.
It's when we started working into alchemy, we were doing the different experiments every week.
Oh.
And one of the things that you kept driving at was be part of the experiment, don't be the observer. Same
Because
thing,
you are.
the same thread.
Yeah. You are part of the experiment. You are a pentagram.
That's
I mean, if
exactly.
you don't believe it, stand up, put your arms and legs out to the sides. By the way, you'll come across, there's a book called The Pen Emin. And in it, they have this white, red, blue, yellow, green kind of symbol with a man standing in the middle of it. Do you know this? You've probably heard this before, that from the neck up, male and female are the same. From the neck down, the plumbing and everything else is different. Okay. In the diagram, this one with Saturn in yellow on the right, with green and Venus on the left, white and Mercury on the right lower, and blue and Jupiter on the left lower. That is a man facing you. Okay, red in the head, yellow, green, blue, white, all this type of stuff. That's a man facing you. It's not very clear in the picture, but when is my camera going to go nuts? Okay, for a lady, it's the opposite. All right, so she's facing away from you, but the head remains the same. See, now the right hand is green, left hand yellow, right foot blue, left leg white, but same from the neck up. You've heard this said before. I just don't know if you've had the kind of explanation of it. We've talked about silver and gold atmospheres. There's also an iron, also a copper, also a tin, also a mercury, conveniently enough, and lead. Okay. You can also bring those environments in. I wouldn't recommend a lead environment. It's worse than gold in that aspect. I mean, you just might as well be death. Yeah, and the whole idea of alchemy is to kind of go through the stages. Get lead to go to copper, get copper to go to mercury, mercury to come to iron, tin, and then eventually once you have this penultimate, right, pen 5 ultimate aspect of things, then you can transform it into silver or gold. It's the process of development. You have to start with your soul to fix your spirit. And to fix your soul, you have to start with the body and understand what each function does. Fix the body, fix the soul, fix the spirit, converge the spirit into one thing. That's the process of The journey, that's the journey. It's evolution. Yeah. Good, well said, Ion. You're absolutely right. Be in it because you already are, whether you realize it or not. If you're not in it, you just failed to realize that you're in it. And that's all there is to it. Just lost that perception.
Right.
And just like there's ways to induce a silver and gold atmosphere, there's ways to introduce a iron, copper, tin, mercury, or lead atmosphere. They might be useful for certain things, but we're probably never told about any of those ones. You should have been. I'll let you work out how you might induce. Well, you know, actually, you might have been told about it. Do you remember things like red, 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 white, 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 yellow, yellow, green, 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 green? Huh? You were kind of taught about how to project these words that will induce these various atmospheres. But now you know a little bit more about what you're actually doing. So if you want a copper atmosphere, go for green, for example.
Right. Right.
Copper will show up. Just don't let it touch tin. They nullify each other. Copper and tin will nullify each other. As you saw in your experiment, when we made batteries out of ice cube trays. Is this useful? I want to inspire people. I want to inspire you. You're going to run away with
Very
so many
much.
more things, Ion. You'd be like, I can't even keep up. Saying, here's, can we switch to one meeting a month?
No.
This is a sprint down Emin 1, okay? The real basic stuff, but it's basic stuff that you need to get under your belt so that you can move on and use this as a foundation to attain deeper understandings of things or to connect to things like Gemrod, for example. You can't just jump into Gemrod. You might get fizzed up for trying to do it, but you can't just do it. You need the foundation. You can't jump into Acropolis work. You can't jump into Panem. Well, you could jump into Panem because it actually belongs in the category pentagramic aspect of the human complex and whatnot. So I love doing this with you all. We probably should have done it years ago, actually. Instead, you know, because I'm growing too. It's not easy to do this, especially when you are an unauthorized rogue bandit like myself that just does it because it needs to be done in the world, not because someone handed me a piece of paper and said, you know, go forth and teach Eminent. I just do it.
Right. Right.
But there's a learning curve about doing it as well. And the wrong way into it is to come at the high end and work your way to the low end. But see, that's where I was coming from in like 2000 and earlier. Yeah, I came in too high, all right, and I just started trying to have people work on things like essence and personality directly before the lower aspects of the pentagram were even able to function normally. See, didn't approach it the right way. So I'm learning too, and I appreciate your grace actually in allowing me this process to keep trying to get it right, because that is a noble sentiment. You know? Don't ever beat yourself up and be like, oh, I got it wrong. You know? Yeah. Just keep trying to get it right. That's the aspect that we talked about before of refining, a journey of refinement. So here we are, starting at the very basics, and at some point in time, you'll get to the point, because you've built a proper foundation, that you won't need to go study Gemrod, right? Read the book or read the archives on Gemrod. You'll go, you know what? I think I actually know how to connect to Gemrod as it appears in the universe. Because you have all this work underneath you. You're bright in the astral light. Heaven and earth are taking notice of you. start sending things. They start sending angels, and they start sending essences and attending forces, and my camera again, and all of these different things to say, yeah, go man, go lady, elevate. You can do this. You've got this, right? Sort of thing. And you get these like, oh, right, I understand what Gemrod is. And yet no one's named it yet. Do you know Gemrod is just a placeholder name? Leo couldn't quite get to what its real name was. And because it has kind of the appearance of a rod of gems, when you see it electrically, can't see it astrally, but when you see it electrically, it does have the appearance of like sparkling, and some of them are huge, taller than the tallest building kind of thing. But that was a descriptive name, not what it knows itself as, not its creational name. We haven't figured that out yet. We'll get there, I hope. Or if not me, some generation down the line will be, right. It's not Gemrod, that's description. It's creation knows you by a different name anyway. I'm not Chris or Pierce to creation. I have a creational name, which you don't know and never will. Creation knows. You have one too. Creation knows you by a name. Same thing with Gemrod. Somewhere in creation, it has a real name, and we'll figure it out one day. Once enough humans are safe enough to, or are safe to be able to deal with it as it is, not as they wish it were. Anna, my dear, gotta say something so I see you.
Yeah.
Ah, there you are. Okay.
Yeah.
What are
Yeah,
you saying?
there's a lot in here. Yeah.
I told you I love this thing. It was a gift. It sits on this little thing here that's plugged into the wall, and it's got two strips underneath it. And when I'm not using it, it heats it up, keeps it warm in there. Yeah, it's great, brilliant, wonderful idea. Because generally by the end of an hour and a half, as I tend to go on, it's stone cold and it's nearly impalatable, but it does clear the throat a little bit, and I'm able to carry on. But it's great. Now, what's esoteric and what's occult about that? I didn't say it just for to be spry.
Right.
What's the esoteric aspect of this?
You needed something to keep your coffee warm.
Yeah,
That's the idea.
right. I'm tired of drinking, cold coffee by an hour in. I didn't invent this, by the way, but it's brilliant, and it does teach the difference between occult and esoteric. Esoteric is the need. Esoteric is cold coffee. Doesn't taste good. All right. I don't want to spit it out. I'm going to do that on camera. I mean, I could. I'm free enough. I could actually do it. Put it right at the camera if I wanted to. I have freedom in me, but that's what's esoteric about it. The occult is some engineer going, okay, I understand electricity. I understand that if you introduce electricity into a spiral that has high degree of resistance, things like graphite or whatever the case might be. I'm not sure what's in there, but I'm sure it's something that doesn't conduct electricity very well. And then there's also two little switches, so it knows when it's sitting there and isn't just trying to pump energy out. But someone put this together in the shape of a cup that was wired up in such a way to solve an esoteric problem. The problem is esoteric, the solution is occult, and this is the physical manifestation of it. This is it in action. There is nothing esoteric or occult about a cup in this way, unless you can go back 2 levels and understand the cause of the cause of it.
Could that be electromagnetism?
Well, there you go. Then
Realm.
you get even further in, don't you? Right?
Right.
Yeah, it's not just one, is it?
Right.
Back to the esoteric, so deeper and deeper. The rubbing silk on a piece of glass, or copper and magnetic interactions, copper and magnet, which is generally the interaction between Venus and Mars. Creates electrics, sometimes of the wrong kind. Red and green are probably the most dangerous colors to mix together in the complex. Second most dangerous would be red and green and white. Mixing green and white is called daydreaming.
Right.
Visualization is not daydreaming. I wholly encourage visualization, especially if you can do it from the standpoint of being able to precast something that you want. Really good exercise. Hannah, you probably remember this, but a really good exercise is to stand in the middle of the room, pick a spot on the floor somewhere, and then mentally visualize yourself walking all the way there, every aspect of it, how the air feels on your arms, how the sensation of the floor feels on your feet. Really get a full, strong understanding of what that experience will be like. And once you have that, then begin your journey and see how accurate you were, whether you were or weren't, or what nuances you might have missed. Turn around, pick another spot, this time include those things, and do that. Okay, that is visualization. Daydreaming is sitting there in my chair going, I wonder what it would be like if I was at that spot, and what could I do at that spot, right? Like it's especially if you never stand up and try. That's daydreaming. Daydreaming takes all kinds of forms. If someone ever cuts you off in traffic, or someone says a harsh word to you and you don't have something on the spot, you'll catch yourself daydreaming. Oh, I should have said, right? You're steaming on the way home, and like, oh, that fucker cut me off, and I should have honked my horn, or I should have sped up and gone around him, or I should have done this, or I should have flipped him off as I drove by. You didn't do any of it, right? Because you were too timid to do it. Or someone says a harsh word to you, and you come home and you brew on it, or brood on it, and you can spend hours in your brain life thinking of all the things that you should have said. Oh, if I had just said this, that would have been a hell of a comeback, sort of thing. And you'd be surprised how much time can be wasted on that type of thing. That is daydreaming. That is green mixing in with your white. In other words, high sexual force, creating something new, mixing into your brain, your head life. Visualization, okay. Daydreaming, harmful, generally speaking. Yeah, it's like people that dream about, what they would do if they won the lottery and they never actually go out and buy a ticket. It's ludicrous. No place for it in your journey, okay? Try to avoid it at all costs. First, just try and observe it when it's happening in you, because that's where it starts. You can't really change anything until you get a very clear picture of what you're like. You got to get a clear picture of what you're like first. Don't go tinkering with things. Sometimes people meet a way like this. It brings them face to face with who they are versus who they thought they were. And they go and change everything in their life, right? They stop smoking, they stop drinking, they start eating better, they get rid of negative habits and all this type of stuff. And it's too damn much. In the beginning, only observe, only go, oh wow, I do that. It may strike you as a bad habit, but if you tinker with that, you're going to mess yourself up. You're not going to be able to engage in a productive personal development journey until you have the whole picture. Because here's the thing, if you're drinking too much, as an example, right? If you're drinking too much, there's a reason why. And if you stop doing that, it's going to unbalance something else in you. And that imbalance of something else in you will then imbalance something else in you, and you're a bigger wreck. And you might as well just stuck with it until you actually get the big picture of how everything interoperates and works together. You'll ruin yourself if you try and do it that way. Just a fair warning, yeah? Certain religions require this of you, don't they? Like, you want to join our church, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, right? Welcome. Yeah, be perfect, come on in. Right? We don't do that. We embrace the black sheep aspect. Be the black sheep. Love what you are at the beginning, because the very fact that you found a work like this at all means that there's something working in you that's correct. Yeah, don't go changing anything. Even later, don't go changing anything. And the reason I say this is because as you change based on your own observations and based on the things that you're able to connect to, and the things that you're able to understand, change happens to you, and then things fall away. If you suddenly wake up one day and go, I just don't have any craving for a cigarette anymore, for example. I just don't crave alcohol anymore. Weird, right? Just stopped all of a sudden. It's because something changed in you. Things are now set right, and that can be let go. You don't have to try to break a bad habit. A rather basic example, but I think you get the point.
Yeah.
Now, fools do that. Fools try to change themselves. It's like a car trying to change itself. You need a mechanic to change a car, right? Transformers, right? They'll just start, putting their head over here and putting their leg up here and that type of stuff. That's what a wrong manufacturer-based esoteric journey does. And the reason why it happens is because once you start observing yourself very carefully, it's a bit embarrassing. It's a bit embarrassing, I'll say. If you've ever watched yourself on film, for example, you're like, oh God, I don't look like that, right? I don't talk like that. No way. Who is that? Yeah, it can be very facing. Once you have that kind of ability to be able to face yourself and take a movie of yourself throughout the day, you start going, God, I'm not really what I thought I was. Really not, It's embarrassing. No one else notices. Everyone else loves the asshole you are. Right? Anyway,